Hi everybody, my name is Chad Thorsen. I am a speedrunner. I primarily run Resident Evil 2 Remake, and I have been getting some requests from people who wanted a more in-depth, comprehensive guide for like the really nitty-gritty details to put out there, and I think that I wanted to tackle this pretty big project by just kind of showcasing a lot of things that I didn't know when I first started. I feel like a lot of information, while it is available, I don't think it's consolidated in one easy to find place. And so I want to make sure that, I cover that in this video, and that I can organize this, make this easily digestible. And my goal for this series is to get the absolute beginner up and started with the Resident Evil 2 speedrunning, and just to get them all the tools and information they need necessary to understand the route, the setup, and everything else in between. So this first video is going to be covering a couple different things that are in regard to setup. I'm going to go ahead and explain a couple things. There won't be too much gameplay, if not any at all, in this video. This is going to primarily focus on helping you understand how this game works, and the minor adjustments that you can do in order to optimize your play, and also just in general speedrun the game. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is for the absolute beginner of the game. There are 4 different categories in the game. There's Claire A, Claire B, Leon A, and Leon B. There are 2 different modes. There are standard and hardcore. This is going to cover the Claire A standard mostly. We can do other routing sections in different videos to explain that, but I normally run Claire A standard. It's a fairly competitive category, and there's a lot of reasons why Claire's campaign is, for many reasons, a little more challenging than Leon's is, and we'll cover that here in a second. So, as you can see, you have a new game second run, and of course you have Leon and Claire, and that's that there. So, first things first, I'm just going to kind of go down the list here. There's a couple things that I do want to talk about. So the first thing I want to talk about is a tool that you can use to really enhance your gameplay. Also, it definitely helps you understand where you are in terms of health, and something called difficulty adjustment, which we'll get to in a second. This tool is called, let's see if I can pull it up here. This tool is called the SRT. The SRT is it's something that's going to, hang on one second here. It's going to read the files inside of the game, and it's going to let you know your health, your DA level, which we'll cover here in a little bit, and it's also going to let you, in some instances, let you know how many enemies are in a room. There will be enemy HP bars that kind of pop up here, and it'll just show you what's going on. The SRT is an incredibly beneficial tool for boss fights, very specifically G2, in my opinion. The G2 fight is pretty rough, and the SRT is going to help you understand how you need to know a certain health threshold before you activate the crane, but we're way off from understanding that. So the SRT is free to download. I'm going to show you a link here. So you can find this on the forums. I'll put a link for this below. Here's a download, readme, change log, source code, and this will pretty much get you all set up. I believe there's a new version coming out. I think I've heard from a good friend of ours, but I'm not too sure. But this version works just fine, and this can help you get set up with what you need. The other thing that I would like to talk about is going to be difficulty adjustment, and this is also very, very important to understand for boss fights. Difficulty adjustment means that it changes depending on how well you are performing. The game is going to change itself to accommodate that. So, for example, if you're getting bit a lot, you're getting damaged, you're missing shots, you are dying constantly, the DA is going to change itself to a much lower value. If you are whizzing past enemies, if you are killing things very quickly, if you are absolutely destroying the game, the DA is going to increase higher and higher and higher. As an example, if I can pull up a save file here, I'm going to go to the G3 fight. This is not the highest DA that it can be, and you should be able to see this on the screen in a second. Right, so at this point, the DA is at a 6, which means that's fairly high. Actually, let me get a better example here. This is an old save file. It's not current. So, okay, there we go. This is an 8. I believe the highest it can go is typically on a standard playthrough. The highest it's going to go is going to be about a high 8. I've had it as almost up to 9,000 on a really good speedrun. So 8 typically is where you can expect the DA to be. So the DA essentially is going to make a lot of these encounters more difficult, except for IVs. They're one shot, one kill, essentially. So again, things that mess up your, or things that affect your DA, whiffing shots. I think grabbing more ammo increases your DA. I'm not sure. I think it does, actually. So that's also important to keep in the back of your head as well, because it's going to change some aspects of your speedrun that you are going to come into contact with. So the next thing I want to talk about is the FPS categories. This game is broken up into 2 categories, and the reason for that is because the graphic outputs require different strats. Essentially, if this game had no filter and anyone could run the highest graphics card they want, the game would be running at a very, very unfair advantage for some people. It would be pay to win, essentially. If your graphics card was super high end and someone couldn't afford that, then that's, they would easily stomp the boss fights, and I'll explain that with this quick example real quick. Okay. So the reason FPS is different, and I'm going to explain here in a second, this is very important. The knife is going to do a lot more damage on higher FPS counts just because the knife is going to register more hits. And this is specifically used in the boss fights. In 60 FPS, this would not be possible. You couldn't do that with as many slashes as that was. You may have to do a different strat. So the category that I run is 120 FPS. So that means that there are 2 different strats, and I'm actually going to be covering this in a separate section for most people so they can understand. If your graphics card is not as powerful as something that can pump out 120 FPS consistently, that's okay, because you can still speedrun the game. There are categories that are available for you. Also, something that's very important to understand that I didn't know when I first started doing this is how to limit your FPS. So this is the NVIDIA control panel here. You can do a global frame cap of 120 FPS, right? So you want to have this up here in the top left corner, or just really wherever it's visible. I'll explain that in a second. So 120F is capped. This GPU can go much further than that, but we want to keep it at 120 FPS because that's the category that we run. If you go above 120 FPS, it might stutter at 121. You can see that in the menu. That's okay, but like as long as in game it doesn't go 121, it should be fine. I mean, I've heard it's okay if it does do that sometimes, but it's a hard cap at 120 for the most part. So you go to program settings here, and you're going to select a specific program. So we already have our Biohazard 2, right? So then we would just go down here, and max frame rate is going to be set to 120 FPS. Cool. Awesome. And then we close this. And if you were wondering how you can get your FPS counter, you go to your G4. I don't know anything for AMD. I just only know NVIDIA. I'm sure it's something similar. But if you want to display your FPS counter, go to HUD layout. And then you go to FPS counter, display, top left corner, boom. And that is going to ensure that you are playing at the right FPS. So that's super important because the FPS is a massive factor in terms of how you're going to face the bosses in this game, which we're going to talk about that later. Specifically, I want to talk about the interact keys. These are 2 keys that I use to really help you process through the menu. The interact keys, the E and Q, I have them set to 2 keys, so I can pretty much start spamming those buttons. I use my pointer and ring finger. I think that's it, right? I use this, right, to pretty much smash the E and Q to get through certain menu parts. Your fingers might be like, what the hell? This isn't natural for me, but like over time, you'll kind of build that muscle in your hand that can help you go through that. Let's see if I can find a way to demonstrate. Okay, so we have this is our medallion puzzle here. So basically, I'm going to start just smashing the keys here. So you can get through the menu pretty quickly by doing that. So it's way faster to do this because if you smash both, you can get through the inputs pretty quickly. There's a little bit of lag sometimes, but and there's a little bit of a rhythm to it, and you'll get it down. And we'll kind of explain that later, the nuances of it, but it's going to help you get through certain interactions you need to go through. It can help you get through certain menuing that you need to bypass, but I really recommend both of those. A good alternative would be to smash one key like your life depends on it. That is possible if you also are really just good at that. But having two keys bounded to interact is going to be your best bet for optimal performance there. So yeah, that is essentially the startup guide. All of these are set here to help you get set up with the run in terms of everything that's not gameplay. We can go over some gameplay on the next video and we'll talk about Claire specifically. Leon and Claire play very similar except for in one category or one area of performance, and we'll talk about that in the next video. But I'm excited to make this video. I am not the top runner by any means, but I have been running this for a good while. I have a fairly competitive time, and I want to help new people get set up in areas that I didn't know and I couldn't find readily available information that was consolidated. So I'm more than happy to answer questions in our Discord. All those links will be below in the video as well. So we will see you on the next one.